From your first breath in this world, you are trained to perform intelligence, not to understand, but to appear understanding. The classroom becomes a stage, the office a theater, and conversation a competition. You learn early that applause feels better than accuracy, that sounding right often matters more than being right. And thus begins the slow corruption of the mind, not by ignorance, but by vanity. They will tell you to hide doubt, to speak with confidence even when you have none. To never say I don't know, because humility is mistaken for weakness. You watch those who speak loudest rise the fastest, and something inside you adapts. You begin to imitate certainty, wear it like armor, polish it daily for the world to admire. You become fluent in performance, and foreign to truth. Tell me, how much of your honesty have you already traded for approval? How many times have you silenced a question just to appear wise? You think you're protecting your image, but in truth, you are building your own cage. Pretending to know becomes easier than admitting ignorance. And in that comfort, the mind begins to rot. Because when you stop being honest about what you don't know, you stop learning. When you start valuing perception over understanding, you start dying. Not physically, but intellectually. The decay is slow, elegant, invisible. You still read, still quote, still argue, but the substance is gone. You begin collecting words instead of wisdom. You no longer think, you recite. You no longer observe. You perform, and society applauds you for it. That is the cruelest part. The crowd loves confidence, not truth. They cheer the speaker who sounds intelligent, not the thinker who stays silent. Because silence doesn't entertain, doubt doesn't trend, reflection doesn't sell. So the world builds shrines for pretenders and ignores the patient builders of real thought. It rewards the illusion of intellect and punishes the discipline of inquiry. And you, wanting to belong, learn to play along. You study the tone, the phrasing, the posture of those admired. You learn how to speak without saying anything. You memorize brilliance instead of building it. You quote men greater than you because you've stopped trying to become one. You confuse imitation for growth, rhetoric for power, and applause for proof. But there is a cost, subtle, silent, and irreversible. Pretending to be intelligent is not just dishonest. It is self-destruction disguised as sophistication, because the more you pretend, the more you lose touch with your own reality. You forget what genuine curiosity feels like. You stop asking questions that matter. You begin censoring yourself not out of wisdom but fear. Fear of being exposed. Fear of being seen as less. And fear, my friend, is the graveyard of intellect. Every circle of pretenders becomes an echo chamber of ego. They trade ideas like counterfeit coins, shiny but worthless. They praise each other's cleverness while rotting together in mediocrity. Their dialogues are performances, rehearsed to impress but empty of insight. The truth becomes a liability because it cannot be manipulated to flatter the crowd. And so, truth is replaced by performance. Look closely at them, these performers of intellect. They are fluent in sarcasm, quick with mockery, armed with vocabulary but empty of vision. They drown clarity in complexity because confusion sounds intelligent to the untrained ear. They don't seek understanding. They seek admiration. And in doing so, they infect every space they enter. Their presence reshapes you. You start measuring your thoughts by their reactions. You begin doubting your instincts because they sound smarter. You start competing for their approval, correcting others for errors you barely understand, quoting theories you've never tested. The disease spreads quietly. Every gesture of imitation, every moment of false understanding erodes your integrity. Soon you no longer know who you are. You've become a reflection of the crowd, polished, confident, and hollow. Tell me, when did learning become theater? When did curiosity start feeling like vulnerability? When did silence, the cradle of thought, become a sin? You think you're progressing, but you're decaying. You think you're admired, but you're merely entertaining. The applause becomes a drug, the illusion a routine. And when you finally pause to listen, you hear only noise. The applause of fools echoing inside your own skull. Even one pretender in your circle is enough to corrupt your clarity. Because pretenders speak not to enlighten, but to dominate. They don't share ideas. They broadcast superiority. They weaponize intellect to shame sincerity. They make you feel foolish for being curious, childish for being honest, and naive for being humble. They twist humility into weakness until you start hiding it yourself, and once you do, you've joined them. That's how imitation spreads, not through teaching, but through shame. The world shames truth until pretense feels like survival. And when everyone is pretending, no one can tell who's real anymore. The entire culture becomes performance, polished, articulate, and utterly detached from wisdom. But the wise know, intelligence is not the ability to appear certain. It is the courage to admit uncertainty. It's not arrogance dressed as eloquence. It's humility dressed as silence. Real intellect does not need to prove itself. It knows that clarity is more powerful than complexity, that listening is more dangerous than talking, that restraint commands more respect than performance ever could. Few have the strength to stand alone in that truth. Few can resist the addiction of appearing intelligent. Can you? Because once you join the theater, it's hard to escape. The role consumes you. You start rehearsing even your private thoughts. You imagine audiences in your mind, judging every opinion before you've spoken it. You stop thinking freely because every thought must sound impressive. Your mind becomes a public relations campaign, a marketing department for your ego. You become your own product, and soon you lose the most sacred human experience, the joy of not knowing. The peace of uncertainty, the freedom to be wrong. Tell me, when was the last time you learned something that humbled you? When was the last time you said, "I don't know," without shame? If you can't remember, you've already started pretending. Pretending to be intelligent doesn't just fool others. It fools you. It replaces growth with image, truth with validation. You stop seeking reality. You start editing it. Every lie you tell to appear wise builds another wall between you and understanding. Until one day, you realize you've become a stranger to your own mind. And by then, the performance is permanent. The crowd will still applaud you. They will still call you brilliant, insightful, deep, but inside, you will feel hollow, because you know it's not admiration for who you are, but for who you pretend to be. You've gained the world's approval, but lost your authenticity. You've earned attention, but forfeited peace, and when that day comes, when the applause finally fades, you will feel it, the silence of a mind that no longer knows itself. A voice that no longer speaks truth, only repeats what it hopes sounds wise. And that, my friend, is the quietest kind of death, the death of intellect under the weight of imitation. So before you wear that mask again, ask yourself, is it worth it? Is the illusion of wisdom worth the cost of your mind? Because pretense may win you admiration, but truth, even when it isolates you, grants you mastery. The question is simple. Do you want to look intelligent? Or do you want to become powerful? Because power, real power, begins where pretense ends. It grows in silence, in solitude, in the brutal honesty of confronting your own ignorance. It is built in moments when no one is watching, when you dare to say, "I don't understand this," and stay long enough with that discomfort to change it. Pretenders flee from ignorance. Thinkers mine it for gold. Those who chase the image of intelligence become actors, slaves to applause. Those who chase truth become architects, builders of understanding that outlast admiration. One lives for perception, the other for permanence. Do you know why the crowd fears thinkers? Because thinkers cannot be manipulated. You cannot sell illusions to someone who sees through them. You cannot shame someone who has embraced their ignorance and turned it into strength. The pretender's weapon, opinion, becomes useless against such a mind. That's why societies prefer showmen over philosophers, and politicians over sages. Pretenders are predictable. They serve the comfort of illusions. Thinkers dismantle them. To think honestly is rebellion. To question your own intelligence is revolution. And to reject pretense is the first act of freedom. But freedom is painful. It demands the death of ego, the same ego that whispers, "You must appear wise, or you will be forgotten." That voice will fight you. It will remind you of every time silence cost you attention. It will tempt you back to the theater, because ego thrives in eyes, in attention, admiration, validation. But intellect thrives in absence, in stillness, in withdrawal, in deliberate solitude. Every wise man you admire paid for it with isolation. They were ridiculed before they were revered, because to the pretenders truth always sounds offensive, clarity always sounds arrogant, authenticity always sounds dangerous. And yet they endured, because they understood that appearing intelligent is temporary power, but understanding reality is eternal power. The pretender manipulates perception. The thinker manipulates reality itself. Do you see the difference? The pretender moves people with words. The thinker moves worlds with silence. Machiavelli once said, "Men in general judge more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see, few can feel. That is the curse of the pretender. They live for the eye, never for the hand. They build nothing, create nothing, leave nothing. They are mirrors, reflecting light from others, but producing none of their own. The thinker, on the other hand, does not seek to be seen. He seeks to see, and that difference changes everything. Because when you begin to see, really see, the world stops being theater and becomes anatomy. You no longer care for applause, because you found something rarer than fame, understanding. And yet, this understanding comes with a burden. To see the world clearly is to lose innocence. You begin to recognize that most debates are ego rituals. Most conversations are power dances. Most intellectuals are actors trapped in their own performance. The stage grows unbearable once you've seen the strings. That's why thinkers withdraw. Not because they despise people, but because they can no longer bear the noise. They crave the purity of thought, not polished, not performed, but raw. They understand that to preserve intellect, one must protect silence like a fortress, but silence is expensive. The world punishes those who refuse to perform. They will call you cold, distant, arrogant. They will say you lack charisma, that you don't fit in. They'll ridicule your uncertainty, mock your pauses, twist your clarity into cruelty. That's the price of refusing the mask. The mask is popular because it's polite. Truth is not. And yet, every era, every civilization, every kingdom that has ever risen was built by those who removed their masks, by those who had the courage to appear foolish before becoming wise. Every genuine breakthrough in history was born from doubt, not pretense. From curiosity, not imitation. From those willing to say, "I don't know, but I will find out." Meanwhile, the pretenders stood on the sidelines, applauding themselves. The irony? The world forgets the performers but remembers the thinkers. It always has. Time rewards substance, not spectacle. The crowd may not understand you now, but it will live in the world your mind creates, so let them play their roles. Let them sound intelligent. You build your mind like a fortress. Fill it not with quotes, but with questions. Guard it from applause. Discipline it with silence, because intellect is not what you know. It's how honestly you face what you don't. Understand this. Pretending to be intelligent may earn you followers, but being intelligent earns you freedom. And freedom is rarer than fame, deeper than recognition, stronger than applause. Pretenders chase respect. Thinkers command it without asking. Do you still wish to imitate, knowing the cost? Because once you start thinking deeply, the world will resist you. It will test you. People will accuse you of arrogance simply because you no longer flatter them. You will lose circles that only existed to exchange validation. You will be misunderstood. But that is the price of depth in a shallow age. The mind that refuses to perform is always exiled first, then studied later. But that exile is sacred. It's where you find the real voice buried under all the borrowed noise. It's where you learn that intellect is not found in what you say, but in what you endure. That true intelligence is not flashy. It's disciplined. It doesn't seek to impress. It seeks to understand. The fools talk of brilliance as if it were decoration. The wise treat it as a responsibility. Pretenders chase cleverness. Thinkers chase clarity. Pretenders want to be seen as right. Thinkers want to become useful. One performs, the other transforms, and that right there is the true cost of imitation. You can spend your life pretending to be intelligent and be applauded by men who do the same. Or you can live as a student of truth and be feared, envied, misunderstood. But free. Ask yourself, which do you prefer, applause or accuracy? Image or mastery? Validation or vision? Because you cannot have both. The mind that seeks admiration must always remain enslaved to it. The mind that seeks understanding eventually becomes untouchable. It no longer bends to opinion, no longer fears ridicule, no longer needs performance. It becomes sovereign, and that sovereignty is the highest form of intelligence. So if you must choose, choose the path of solitude. Choose silence over spectacle. Choose clarity over complexity. Choose mastery over mimicry. Let others pretend and you build, because every time you fake wisdom, you betray the only chance you have to become truly wise. Every time you perform intellect, you abandon the quiet, sacred process of actually thinking. Every time you imitate another's brilliance, you postpone the birth of your own. Pretenders drown in noise. Thinkers rule in silence, and in the end, when the curtain falls and the applause dies, the actors will vanish. But the architects, the thinkers, will remain. Their words will outlive their voices. Their ideas will outlast their names. Because truth, once discovered, doesn't need performance. So stop rehearsing. Stop performing. Stop pretending. You were not born to appear intelligent. You were born to see.